Picture this. It's the absolute dead of night, May 2nd, 2011. You're flying in complete pitch darkness, crossing completely silently into Pakistani airspace. We are about to look at one of the most meticulously planned, highest-stakes military operations in modern history. The goal? To breach an isolated compound and capture or kill the world's most wanted man. So, let's just dive right in and see exactly how this incredible operation unfolded.
At exactly 1 a.m., two highly modified Black Hawk helicopters arrived at this mysterious triangular-shaped compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. They had taken off from a base in Jalalabad, Afghanistan, and had completely evaded Pakistani radar. How'd they do that? Well, these weren't your standard choppers. They were specially designed and coated in a heavy fabric that drastically reduced their sound as well as their radar and infrared visibility. But, this whole thing almost kicked off with an absolute disaster. The first helicopter, known as Chalk 1, ran into this unexpected, really rare aerodynamic phenomenon called an air vortex flow. It basically lost all its lift, shifted hard over into a side compound, and crashed. The tail literally snapped right onto the boundary wall. Meanwhile, though, the second chopper, Chalk 2, flawlessly hovered in position and successfully dropped its troops down to the roof and the gates, along with a combat assault dog named Cairo. So who was actually inside these helicopters pulling this off? It was the SEALs, the United States Navy, Sea, Air, and Land teams. These are the absolute elite commandos designed specifically for these types of special, ultra-high-risk missions. They sent 24 commandos on this raid, and honestly, the most miraculous part of that initial crash, all 12 SEALs inside Chalk 1 survived completely unharmed. Literally didn't miss a beat. They just climbed out of the wreckage and immediately started their explosive breach into the compound.
Section 1. The Rise of Al-Qaeda. The Path to 9/11.
To really understand the scale of this, we have to rewind a bit. Osama bin Laden, born in Saudi Arabia in 1957, actually spent a decade fighting against the Soviet Union in Afghanistan, which is where he built a massive following. Fast forward to 1988, and he founds an organization called Al-Qaeda, which translates to the base. But his deep animosity towards the United States really caught fire in 1990. When Iraq invaded, Saudi Arabia chose American military help for their defense rather than accepting the help of bin Laden and his new organization. He felt totally alienated by this embrace of a Western military presence, and that sparked a deadly vendetta.
Over the next decade, Al-Qaeda orchestrated this series of really devastating attacks against American targets to prove their dominance. You had the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, the 1998 attacks on U.S. embassies in Tanzania and Kenya, the 2000 bombing of the USS Cole, and of course, all of this culminated in the horrific events of September 11, 2001, where hijacked planes were crashed into the Twin Towers, the Pentagon, and a field in Pennsylvania, killing 3,000 people. From that single day on, capturing him became the ultimate, absolute priority.
Section 2. Tracking the Courier, the 10-year manhunt.
So how did they finally find him after a decade? The single biggest breakthrough actually came from an interrogation at the Guantanamo Bay detention camp. Intelligence agencies managed to extract just a single name from a detained Al-Qaeda operative, Abu Ahmed al-Kuwati. He was known to be bin Laden's most trusted Pakistani courier and basically his right-hand man. By painstakingly tracking this courier's movements, the CIA was eventually led straight to a highly unusual property in Abbottabad.
Imagine watching a house for 5 months and noticing some seriously weird stuff. During their surveillance in 2010, the CIA set up a safe house nearby and just watched. This massive compound had absolutely zero internet or phone lines. The residents there never put out their garbage for collection, they burned all their trash inside the walls. The boundary walls were exceptionally high, we're talking up to 18 feet. And strangely, there was a 7-foot privacy wall built right onto the top floor balcony, exactly high enough to hide a tall man pacing outside. I mean, that is a massive red flag.
But, the CIA can't just guess on something this huge. They needed hard proof. So they executed this clever, but incredibly risky, plot. They sent a local doctor named Shakil Afridi to run a fake vaccination camp inside the compound just to confirm bin Laden was actually there. The intelligence they gathered finally confirmed their target, and it was relayed directly to U.S. President Barack Obama, who gave the green light for the raid. Tragically for Dr. Afridi, though, this act of espionage ultimately cost him a 23-year sentence in a Pakistani prison.
Section 3. Operation Neptune Spear. Let's get back to that midnight raid.
Okay, snapping back to the present moment at the compound. The SEALs had already cut the power to the entire property before they even breached the walls, plunging the whole place into pitch darkness. But equipped with night vision goggles, they had a massive tactical advantage. They moved in fast,
They secured the guest house, neutralizing that courier Abu Ahmed. Then they moved to the main building's ground floor, neutralizing his brother. And a really crucial point here, throughout all of this intense firefight, the SEALs actively gathered the women and children they encountered and moved them into safe zones to protect them from the crossfire. This next detail is just tactically fascinating. As they advanced up the stairs to the first floor, they encountered bin Laden's son, Khalid. In the pitch black, one of the SEALs, who actually spoke Arabic, used a trick. He whispered with an Arabic accent, "Khalid, Khalid." Confused in the dark, Khalid peeked his head out from behind cover just to look, and the SEALs immediately neutralized him, fully clearing the path to the top floor. Now, you might be wondering about the geopolitical elephant in the room here. What about the Pakistani military academy? It was literally just 1 kilometer away from this house. The SEALs were blowing up gates, shooting in the middle of the night, inside a sovereign country, without telling the host government. If the Pakistani military showed up, it would be an absolute disaster. To mitigate that massive risk, there were actually 79 backup troops sitting in Chinook helicopters back in Afghanistan, fully armed, fueled, and ready to fly in and pull the SEALs out if things went south. Finally, they breached the second floor. Osama bin Laden was found attempting to hide behind his wives. In a snap moment, a SEAL took the shot. The mastermind behind 9/11 was dead. Through their satellite radios, the team transmitted a chilling, prearranged code word back to the White House and military command, who were all watching this live. Geronimo, 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 EKIA. Enemy killed in action.
Section 4. Secrets in Sea Burial. The Aftermath.
470,000. That is how many computer files they pulled out of there. Before they evacuated, the SEALs actually hopped on the radio and asked command for an extra 10 minutes. Why? Because they realized they had stumbled onto an absolute goldmine of intelligence. They extracted nearly 500,000 files from 183 separate devices just scattered around bin Laden's private quarters.
And what they found on those hard drives is honestly kind of a wild juxtaposition. You have this fearsome terrorist leader, right? But alongside his extensive personal journals and Al-Qaeda planning documents, they found a ton of just everyday pop culture stuff. There were video games like Super Mario and Counter-Strike. There were Disney movies like Ice Age and Cars, presumably for the kids living there. And, revealing a pretty self-obsessed streak, he had saved multiple documentaries and articles specifically about himself.
But before they could leave, they had to take the body. They packed explosives onto their crashed stealth helicopter, completely blew it up to prevent the tech from being reverse engineered, and flew out on a backup chopper. Which leads us to this massive logistical and political dilemma. Why bury him in the ocean instead of on land? Well, think about it. If they buried him in a specific country, his grave could instantly become a physical shrine for extremists. But if they cremated him, it would violate Islamic law and provoke massive outrage. They needed a solution that left absolutely zero physical trace.
So, here is what they did. They transported the body to the USS Carl Vinson, an American aircraft carrier out in the Arabian Sea. And they adhered strictly to Islamic burial traditions. The body was properly washed, wrapped in a traditional white shroud, and an Arabic translator was actually brought in to recite the correct religious prayers. Finally, adhering to the custom of burial within 24 hours of death, his body was slipped anonymously into the vast ocean. And that brings us to the final reality of this whole operation. A mastermind who eluded the world's most powerful military for a decade, totally undone by a single courier's trail, and buried anonymously in the ocean. It's such a striking conclusion, isn't it? The man who sought to leave a permanent, devastating mark on history had his physical legacy entirely erased by the very forces he opposed. It really leaves you wondering, how fragile is the entire apparatus of global secrecy when just a single name whispered in a prison camp can completely unravel a 10-year disappearing act? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions, and I'll catch you in the next one.